Hey guys, and welcome to the weekly docket. Hey guys, good morning. You're going to notice that our setup is a little different here because I don't have the slides up yet, but they are loaded up. But I've got co-host Judy on the screen with me right now before we get into the Rogues Gallery of Losers that we're going to be talking about with some pretty big case updates in some of these cases. And, we usually roll right into this stuff. But before we do, I wanted to, most of you probably know who Judy is, right? But just in case you don't, like you're living in a cave somewhere, or you've been out of touch for such a long time, I'll let her tell you a little bit about herself. She and I are living, or at least work in the same county. So we're subject to the same, kind of law stuff and things like that. So we know a little bit about what's going on around here. But Judy, tell people what's up with you and your channel.
Sure. Steve, thanks so much for having me. I was born in Chicago. My parents came from Taiwan, and I basically grew up in Georgia, went to college in California, went to law school in DC. Then I moved down here because my ex-husband is a professor at a law school here. So I've had my own private practice since 2006 after working for some different law firms.
And some of what you do is to try and do collaborative divorce kind of practice. Yeah,
yes.
I really think that's great. And if people don't know what it is, find out about it, because even if you're not going through a divorce, and hopefully you aren't, if one of your friends do and they can get routed to something like what Judy does, that's so much better than slugging it out.
Mm-hmm. So, I've done both. And usually people are pretty miserable when they do court litigation. Sometimes people start out all mad and blazing hot and they think they're going to go to court and win, but then they realize how expensive it is and how time consuming, and all the energy is like flowing out of them. Mm-hmm. So collaborative divorce is definitely the way to go.
Well, and of course, too, a lot of times there's kids involved. And if you can reduce the temperature and the anger involved, that's good for the kids, too. So I really think that's a great initiative that some people who practice have gotten into, rather than the old warfare style. Let's see if we can settle it in the least acrimonious way that you can. So I think that's great, because one of the things, Judy, I know we talked about a while back when we were first starting to talk on YouTube a little bit, is some of the more prominent cases around here have been the result of domestic disputes that just got out of hand and went too far and resulted in murder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so sad. I mean, I know a bunch of cases, where it just started as a, bad relationship, bad marriage. Somebody is angry, worried about losing the kids or the money. So it's just terrible when it results in murder.
So we're going to get into the slides here in a second, but I'm not leaving this intro until I make sure that people do know that when you go to Judy's channel, you're not only going to get insightful legal commentary on not just cases, but matters surrounding the law generally. But I have to admit defeat here. She has some of the finest comedy that you're going to find anywhere, but particularly within the law realm. I mean, really, people, especially when she does it on a weekend, if you don't look at it, you're depriving yourself. So, if you haven't seen it, go. Oh yeah.
Well, I really appreciate your positivity, because there have been multiple commenters who said, you shouldn't be doing this. This is so inappropriate, blah, blah. You're an officer of the court. How dare you act like this on YouTube? But to me, it's all about getting more eyes on a case, because that humor can be a way to educate people more.
Well, one of the things that I think has been bad for civilization is Wi-Fi being able to reach into basements, because people that live in basements sometimes have the dumbest, worst, most butthurt opinions of no value. And you're thinking, how sad must you be just to try and bring other people down all the time? So, yeah, I get that, too, of course. And you just will if you're out there creating content. But on Judy's last stream that involved some comedy, my wife said, she has you completely beat. And I'm like, yeah. And so,
well, Steve, you should try comedy sometime.
Yeah. Hey, look, I'm trying it right now. See, that's the problem.
Yeah, actually, you do say some pretty funny things, just ad lib. So it's like, haha, like the thing about Bryan Kohberger just prancing around stabbing people or something. I mean, some people are going to be offended because like, people died. How dare you? But, sometimes you got to liven it up, because we're talking about such depressing things. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a little when you're in these things all the time, there's a little bit of gallows humor too. Everything can't be super serious all the time, like a funeral home. So, part of bringing the temperature up a little bit on that, and not just being cold all the time, I think is great. But aside from the merits of cases, it's just good. It's fun to watch what you do. So.
Yeah, and for example, Darrell Brooks, can you imagine what kind of comedy skits you could do if you tried to act like Darrell? Maybe there's an idea for you.
Yeah, well, yeah, I agree. He's a rich vein of comedy that is still untapped for what it will provide for people. I think in the long term, he's just ridiculous, of course. All right, so I'm going to put this up here because I have to, because it's from Scotland. I have to say hello to anybody from there because our family are big Scotland fans, even though we've never been there. And Netherlands, I like when we see people from all different kinds of places. All right, let's fire up the slides, guys, because I don't want to ramble. But I also don't want, oh, here we go. Hit the right button here. All right, so the way we've gamed this out a little bit is I'll go over some of the first cases and Judy will chime in whenever she wants to, and then she's going to go over some of the other cases and I'll chime in if I have anything to say or a question or something like that. And I'll also try and keep an eye out for comments and stuff. And Judy too, if you see anything like that, let me know and we'll try and respond to people as we go. So here, speaking of Darrell Brooks, here he is, big money Darrell Brooks, right? Not the picture you want to show the judge when you're filing your indigent application. I think he borrowed that money from somebody, or he's a master of Photoshop, perhaps.
Yeah, it's fake.
Yeah. He's very fake, and he's got a series of cases left. I got asked several times yesterday, what's he still in court for? And that is the situation with Erica Patterson. He's got intimidation of her as witness, battery, and then some things surrounding that. And his case is back in front of Judge Havas, and he was due to have a status update for whether he has counsel or not, and nothing really happened. They reset it for October 31st, which is a good day for Darrell Brooks because he doesn't have to dress up. He already looks like a clown, so he'll be ready to go in court. And the judge asked the public defender's office, hey, what's going on with getting him a new lawyer? So my bet was that he wanted to go pro se, and maybe he still will, but that hasn't evolved yet.
What's bail jumping? What's that about?
Yeah, he pretty much in every case he has bail jumping because they kept letting him out, and then he would keep on violating the terms of bail and not showing up to his appearances and things like that. Mm-hmm. So he's got 2 counts there related to jumping bail in Milwaukee. And I think, if he'd been held there and not let out on such easy terms, he wouldn't have been available to run through the parade. So that's terrible.
Mm-hmm. What's your opinion about Erica?
Well, I don't know a lot about her, but I did watch her testimony in the first case, and that's tough, right? She's been a victim of this guy for quite a while, and then she's going to go testify in a case that's televised to everyone all over the world. And I thought she handled herself very well, very strong, and she has made videos since then talking about wanting to push through this, see the right thing done here, and carry through with this case, and telling people that she appreciates what they've said in support of her. So I thought she came off very well, and I hope this is a way for her to grow and see her worth, because this guy didn't have the right to treat her like he treated her over and over, and like he tried to treat anybody who was in his way, but particularly I think women. And he was very abusive to Erica, and I'm glad to see that she's found a voice in this and knows that people are standing behind her. So that's my opinion of her.
Yeah. You kind of feel sorry for her being dragged into the whole mess and everybody looking at her from an international level. Yes,
and I agree with that. But I do think, she showed a lot of strength in handling it. It's not easy, especially with a whack job, evil person like that waiting to cross-examine you or try to embarrass you or blame you for the things that he did. Mm-hmm. So, seeing some in comments like, who would want to represent this guy? I don't know. It would be a race between Wisconsin and Florida for I don't want to represent Sarah Boone. I don't want to represent Darrell Brooks. In North Carolina, we're maybe kind of halfway between those. So we're safe. And fortunately not licensed. I'm not licensed in either place and not on anybody's list. So I'm safe.
Yeah. Well, doesn't she have a child with him?
Yes. Yeah. At least one. He's got, I think, several children.
Oh, really?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah. And that was one of the things he was crying about in his sentencing phase, was how much he cared about these kids and not being able to be there for them. But he didn't seem sad about that before he was arrested. Mm-hmm. So this was the court statement. I think I just summarized it anyway, where they said he's going to be rescheduled for the end of October. And we'll see if he gets a lawyer or what in the world he does. I have to report on him because he's so totally insane and people want to know. All right. So then we travel back out to west and get into Idaho with Bryan Kohberger, who is under arrest for the murder of 4 college students. This case is being actively litigated by the defense team. Whether he really did it or not is separate from how they do their job, which they need to be aggressive, and they are. So I think he's got good attorneys there. And they've been fighting over cameras in the courtroom, and they had this fight on TV the other day. The defense doesn't want cameras there. The state doesn't want them there either. But some of the victims' family do, and the media, of course, wants cameras, and lots of people at home would like to see the proceedings. So the judge has to balance that, the interest of the media and the public versus the party's interest and the ability to give this guy a fair trial. And kind of what the judge said, at least what I heard, was, I'm not really so worried about the camera operators and how they're operating their equipment as I am about the images of the proceedings coming out, and then people getting on media and misrepresenting what's going on and saying inflammatory things. He was very critical of that, but he did what a judge will often do and reserved his ruling for later. So we're not sure how that'll turn out.
All that inflammatory stuff is going to happen no matter what. So how's it going to stop just because they don't allow cameras?
And I think, Judy, I think that's a good point, because the media made that point. They're like, listen, people are going to talk about this case and they're going to speculate more if they can't see it. And there'll be cameras outside the courtroom. Now, the state said, look, do it like Lori Vallow, have like a delayed audio or whatever. But I think your point is a good one. And I think this judge didn't just reserve the ruling because he didn't want to tell him. I think he seems very thoughtful to me, and he probably is thinking exactly like what you're saying. Like, if I bar these cameras, does that solve the problem that I'm worried about? And maybe it doesn't, right? All it does is keep the proceedings from the public. So I'm of a mixed mind to it. It really is up to the judge what he does on it. I see the points of the people saying that there's a lot of negative things said here that could affect a fair trial. But on the other hand, even if you bar cameras, are people going to stop doing that? I doubt it, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So somebody says Darrell only fights with women. He's too chicken to engage with men. He did shoot at, I think, one of his male relatives, but that's not. Oh. And I think it's because he lost a fight with him. So I support any negative comment from Darrell Brooks. So.
Yeah. There's this YouTuber, now I can't remember her name, but it's something kind of weird, like I am J9. Have you heard of her? Where she's cracking jokes and being very crude, but it's so funny. But she's been focusing on Darrell Brooks. So she also had a live stream show where she was talking about Darrell Brooks's mom's commentary, where Darrell Brooks's mom was ranting and raving about how this is all our problem because of mental illness not being addressed.
Well, I'll have to check that out. Yeah, I was skeptical of the accuracy of his mother's assessment. Okay, he's definitely mentally deranged, because that's what you have to be to do the kind of things he does. But that's far different than he's not responsible for his actions.
Yeah. Oh, people are saying it's called J9 or Eve.
Yeah, let me pop this up. That way I can check it out later.
Thank you.
So thanks for catching that.
Yeah, she is hilarious. I really enjoyed her channel, and I just stumbled on it yesterday.
Well, as you pointed out, he's if you have the ability to do satire, he's a great source, a great base of material, because he's utterly ridiculous, and there is no reason to be sympathetic to the guy at all.
Yeah. Or his mom. His mom seemed like a real character.
Yeah, I felt a little bit for her, but on the other hand, she kept giving him the vehicle even after he hit Erica with it the first time, and was an enabler of what he did. And her statements toward the end, about how it's basically everybody's fault but theirs or his. And no, I don't think so. Oh, look at that. So somebody says that this J9 Eve has done Erica interviews. So I don't know why doesn't the algorithm send that to me? It sends me the weirdest things, but not that.
Yeah. I had to purposely search for Darrell Brooks updates. And since she's done a ton of them, her videos started showing up. So I was like, okay, let's listen to what she has to say. And it was really entertaining, because she actually curses during her live streams, which I try not to do. because I thought YouTube could shut down your stream if you're cursing, but maybe if it's only at the beginning.
Yeah, I did hear that they lightened it up a little bit. If you do it, like you said, kind of midstream and stuff, they're less sensitive about it. And I have done it here and there, but I don't think I'm on their radar too much for anything they'll do to me.
Okay.
So let's see what we got here. There's some good comments going on here. All right, so here's our other friend, Sarah Boone, who's in Florida, who we know was engaged in zipping up her boyfriend into a suitcase and then leaving him there and taunting him while he was saying he couldn't breathe. Then she went to sleep, and in the morning he was dead, and that's the facts. But it's not her truth, even though she hasn't told her what her truth is. But as people wondered, would she get another lawyer? She did. Lucky number 7. The next one, she gets a free prize. Her trial is set for December, but the judge said that without the new lawyer being there. And I'd be surprised if it doesn't get it changed again. I would think it would go into next year. And this lawyer's got a lot to think about. Is he going to use the old experts they had, if they're still available, try and get this new $400 an hour person who might fly in and say she's a battered partner, or pull a new one out of his pocket? They've spent, somewhere around $100,000 on experts and money on attorneys and things. Like, how many experts does she deserve? And while I'm a believer in the battered spouse/partner defense, I don't see her facts fitting that remotely, at least as I understand them. What do you think, Judy?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, maybe there should be some limit on how much money the state should keep forking out for some crazy person like this. Like, she should be told to just represent herself if nobody's good enough for her.
Yeah, I think the judge kind of gave her the warning bell on that at this last hearing when he said, I'm going to look closely at the source of the disputes between your lawyer and you if this happens again, and you have the right to go hire your own lawyer if you don't like how public defenders work. And I do wonder whether this judge will approve additional experts who would repeat the same subject matter that the state has already paid for experts for. Eventually go to trial. That's my view of her. She said she wants to go to trial, so go there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe she's enjoying her time in jail since she had no job anyway. So, yeah, but I just want to add that I think her kid is much better off with the father. The father actually seemed like a decent, sort of normal person from what little I saw of him.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree. And it's unfortunate, but she was leading an irresponsible lifestyle, and her whole pattern of talking to the police was, "Hey, this was an accident. I mean, I'm as affected by this as anyone else is," which isn't true because someone died. And I don't think she understood that not intentionally killing him could still land her in the hot water she's in. And I don't think she's accepted that. But I imagine some of these prior attorneys have told her, you're going to have to do some time on this. The odds of you getting off are unlikely. And I think that's probably behind some of her disputes.
Yeah. Do you happen to know what kind of job she ever had?
No, I don't. When I looked her up a little bit just in the docket down there for civil things, and you saw a lot of foreclosures, credit-based things. And so I haven't seen what she has actually done. She does seem like she could be maybe a former employee of Department of Motor Vehicles or a cable news or cable service in terms of her demeanor and not wanting to listen to people and stuff like that. She has a bad temperament, I think. So I don't know that she's done anything.
Oh, even though she excels at everything, right? Yes. I remember that quote. That was hilarious. Yeah. There was some commenter on one of the videos who said that, Sarah is looking to be sponsored by Samsonite, which I thought was really hilarious. But again, it's that appropriate humor. I don't know. I mean, rest in peace, Jorge.
That's true, but I mean the circumstances are so odd that you're gonna have some jokes about this case, even though it is an open and shut case. Mm-hmm. Let's head to South Carolina, which is more south than North Carolina, if anybody who's not in the South can believe it. And this case has exposed a lot of that. I mean, it's really surprised me, and I'm native to the South, but it's like every stereotype that you'd want to throw down about how corrupt the judicial system is, it seems to be on display down there right now. And so right now, he has an appeal filed, and he's asked the Court of Appeals to suspend that appeal and allow him to file a motion for new trial. And that's based on this alleged series of communications between the clerk and a jury where he says that the clerk told the jury, don't pay attention to the defense, don't be fooled by them, and insinuated that he was guilty. And now that to me, and Judy, I'll let you chime in, I have never, ever experienced a clerk talking to the jury about anything to do with the merits of what was going on in the case. This to me was a surprise, if it's true.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree with you. It's very egregious, these allegations. And just the fact that she comes out with a book right afterwards, that already seems kind of unethical.
Yeah.
She's still working there.
Oh, yeah, she is. And she asked for an ethics opinion, but I don't think her description of the book that she gave the Ethics Commission really reflected what she wrote. And then also they told her, okay, there are certain ways you can do it, but you can't pay attention to all these statutes. And I'm not sure she did that either. So she's got a lawyer now on that's, I guess, counseling her on these things. But you should not monetize your position, your justice position. She should be part of the impartial background of the court as the clerk. She shouldn't be telling anybody anything about the case. I've never seen it.
Yeah, totally. So, I mean, if those allegations are true, then it just kind of perpetuates this whole stereotype of the South as being some cesspool of good old boyism. And, you know, it's who you know, a lot of corruption, you know, just really stinks.
Well, I think, you know, some people have made comments to me like, if this is true, and if is doing a lot of work, right? The only issue here is whether they get an evidentiary hearing to find out whether this is true. But if it's true, then it's just terrible. I mean, this is completely unlawful, and he should get a new trial, even though I think he committed the crime. If she did this, and then it becomes, if it is substantiated at the evidentiary hearing, is it possible that she engaged in this behavior in other cases and people haven't spoken out yet? Like, is this the only one she did because of the book, or did she talk to jurors in other cases if it is substantiated here? And this could have ramifications beyond this case.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Can you imagine the arrogance of her to allegedly actually tell the jury these things? It just shows how she felt like she was above the law and didn't have to pay attention to anything about justice. You know, who would think that it's okay to do these things?
And, you know, of course, like we've both been saying, there's the big if there, but even if they have a hearing and it comes out she didn't do this, this book is wrong. Do not do this. Do not write a book while you're an active clerk of court still holding cases and things. This is not, your job isn't to be an instruction manual. There's things in her book about this juror didn't want to serve because of this. Talk to the judge about that. We could see that, like, you have no business talking out to the public about what jurors said to the judge and stuff. It's just really bad. Yeah,
that's horrible. So hopefully nobody buys her book. Is it available right now?
Yeah, it's on Amazon, and probably the sales are way up, I would think, since this whole... I didn't buy it. I did see some excerpts filed with the motion, but I don't need to buy it. I got the gist of what it's about.
Yeah, same here. It's like, why support this? Yeah, because I've heard of, you know, some attorneys that do criminal cases, they'll write books, but it will be way after they finish the case and they've already stopped working.
Right. I mean, you know, if you retire out of it, let's take Casey Anthony. I think the DA and the defense attorney, they both wrote books, right? And whether they should do it or not do it is still open to discussion. But especially if you're the DA, the judge, the clerk, or whatever, do not do that. Do not write books about cases while you're still seeing cases with your opinions about things and talking about how jurors were. I wouldn't want to serve on a jury panel in front of court officials that I thought are going to tell my private business in some for-profit book. That's ridiculous. Mm-hmm. But the show is still going on in South Carolina, as Murdaugh was in court yesterday for his financial crimes. And I've got up here 99 strikes and you're out. It's really potentially 3 strikes. And that was one of the things his attorneys were complaining about, is that the state was trying to get him another life sentence based on 3 independent verdicts on these financial crimes instead of consolidating cases. And so he's not going to plead it, at least at this point. They want to go to trial. They wanted to go to trial next year, but the judge ended up setting it earlier. And while I watched some of this, Harpootlian told the judge, as one of his reasons for delaying the case or wanting to delay the cases, that the state was pushed the murder cases first So if they didn't care about doing the financial crimes first, why are they in a hurry now? And then Waters, the DA, stood up and said, wait a minute. You filed for speedy motion. You would not waive your for speedy trial. You would not waive your rights to speedy trial. So we had to move forward with the murder case. So you were the person who caused that to happen before the financial crimes. And then Harpootlian said, yeah, but you agreed to it. And that was an example to me of an attorney, in this case, Harpootlian, going pretty loose with the facts by suggesting the state forced the murder case first when he asked for the speedy trial. I would not want to do that in front of a judge too often if I wanted to be believed on the face of what I was saying. Mm-hmm. And then I see somebody saying, oops, I hit the wrong button. Okay. Judge Newman was not a happy camper yesterday. His patience was well tested yesterday. I know a lot of people don't like some of the rulings and things he did in the case, but I still like him as a judge. That's just my opinion. I think he's well-mannered and doles out what needs to be doled out. But I understand if people disagree with his evidence rulings. We can't all like all the same stuff. It wouldn't be a very fun world then. Yeah.
He seemed like a pretty good judge to me during the trial.
Yeah, he was on my sentencing smackdown video I did a while back, where I did epic sentencing smackdowns by judges when the mother of a murderer stood up and started saying how innocent he was. And he stopped her and said, look, we're not talking about that. This is a sentencing hearing. I'm not going to listen to you tell me the jury was wrong. When a jury comes back with a verdict, Newman's moving on to the sentencing phase, and he condenses the nonsense. He's not going to let people just sit there and bamboozle him. So yeah, that's what I liked.
Good. Yeah.
So, all right, Judy, it's your time to tell us what in the world is going on with these cases, including breaking news. And just tell me when you want me to move the slides over and I'll do it.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, this is a great picture, so it's kind of funny to see you suddenly flash it up. But this is Charlie when he got arrested. Believe it or not, he looks about 10 times worse these days because he's been in jail in Leon County since April last year. So he's definitely gained some weight. He's gotten a lot more white hairs, white beard, double chin, bulging eyes. He looks very unhealthy and like a mess. So do you want me to just summarize the case or what?
Sure. I'll flip in with some more pictures. No, you roll it. Just tell me if you think I need to move a slide, and that's what I'll do.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Thank you for doing these great slides because I don't even have the time and wherewithal to do that for my channel. So this is great. Okay, so basically it's a case about two lawyers, one of whom was a law professor at Florida State who taught criminal law, Dan Markell, and his wife, Wendy. They had been married since 2006 and had two very young children when in 2012, Wendy decided the marriage is over. She basically just took the kids and left the house without telling him while Dan was up in New York at a legal conference. So he came home to an empty house where most of the furnishings were gone and his kids were gone. She didn't let him know where their kids were for, I'm not really sure how long, but for at least a week or two, maybe even longer. Wow. So it just turned into a very ugly divorce, but they did settle things. But Wendy desperately wanted to move to Southern Florida, where her parents and her beloved brother, Charlie, whose picture you see down there, where they lived. And they're up in Tallahassee, which I think is about 7 to 8 hours away by car. So her parents were very enmeshed with her as well as with Charlie. So they were very angry at Dan because Dan wouldn't allow her to take the kids and move them down to the Miami area. So Wendy filed a motion back in 2013 to try to relocate with the kids, but the judge denied it with prejudice. So thanks for changing that where it says Dan won in court. Yeah, so it was Wendy's motion, but the judge denied it. So that meant poor Wendy was trapped in Tallahassee until the kids turned 18 because she had to have joint custody with him. So a year later, surprisingly, Dan gets shot twice in the head while he was sitting in his car in his driveway. And turns out it was a hitman, Sigfredo Garcia, who had shot him. And it turned into this whole very complex conspiracy. There was a lot of, forensic work involved. looking at cell phone tower records to try to track down this Prius that was seen driving away from Dan's driveway. So it all finally hooked up to the Adelsons. So I feel like I should stop talking because I don't know if you want to lead this or do you want to? Oh, good. You got a picture of what is it? The mica pine.
That's as close as I think I can get to it. But I did make the attempt to match this car color for these climate aware criminals. Yes, exactly. Yeah, I think that's the right car because one of my office mates drove that kind of car a while back. So yeah. So I don't know how to explain it because it's so complicated of a case with so many people involved. But it turned out that the hitman, the shooter, Sigfredo Garcia, whose picture is down there in the corner, he had been in a on-again, off-again relationship for years with Katie Magbanua, who is the Filipino woman you see in the other picture. She looks a lot worse now. She looks so different. She's gained a ton of weight. So anyway, all these people look very different now, probably in part because of the stress of being involved in this murder conspiracy. So Katie Magbanua, at the time of Dan Markel's shooting, was dating Charlie Adelson, who was Wendy's older brother. They also have an older brother named Rob, who's a successful doctor, but he's in New York and he has spoken out publicly against the family because he believes they were involved with Dan's murder. Wow. So, yeah. So you mentioned the hit job referenced as a television. Yeah, coincidentally, the morning that Dan was shot, this is what I believe happened, that Donna, who is Wendy and Charlie's mother, set up this bogus TV repair appointment so that somebody from, it was either Geek Squad or Best Buy, was supposed to come out to Wendy's house because her TV had a crack in it. She claimed that one of her kids had thrown something maybe at the screen. So the screen was cracked. So this repair person shows up coincidentally, right around that window of time that perhaps Dan was going to be shot. Of course, a lot of people are saying that if they had known immediately that the TV was cracked, she should have been told over the phone that there's nothing you can do, just buy a new TV. This is stupid, So I think that's why Donna was the one who had to make the appointment, because otherwise if Wendy had called and they would have asked her, well, what's going on? And then immediately said, we can't help you. So she had that alibi for that morning. Then she went to have lunch with a couple of her friends. She says it was last minute and that she was in such a rush that she didn't even have time to shower. But here's the kicker that really started making me think that Wendy, the wife or the ex-wife, was involved, is that Dan got shot sometime around maybe 11 in the morning. And then maybe around noon-ish or a little after noon, Wendy was actually seen by a police officer driving right up to where the crime scene tape was. And this was maybe a perimeter of, say, like 3 or 4 houses down from where Dan lived on Trescott Drive. So her minivan was seen driving right up to the crime scene tape and then quickly doing this fast 3-point turn, spinning around and leaving where the crime had occurred. So I bet she didn't expect the police officer to be stationed right there. So he already knew what kind of car she drove. This is what's so great about the Tallahassee PD. Somehow they already figured out what her cell phone number was, what kind of car she drove, and that they should be on the lookout for her. Wow. Yeah. So not only did she visit the crime scene and quickly speed away without even getting out of the car and being like, hey, what's going on? That's where my kids had just spent the night. That's where my ex-husband lives. What happened? Instead, she just speeds off. And then she took this circuitous route down to this ABC liquor store on Thomasville Road and bought Bullet bourbon
or maybe it was Bullet Rye whiskey, but it is pronounced Bullet. And the police did find the bottle of the Bullet liquor in the backseat of her car, along with the receipt from the ABC liquor store. So, yeah, that I find extremely bizarre. You know, what is the coincidence? She also wore a T-shirt that had a big picture of an owl on the front of it. And people have said that the owl is a symbol of death or impending death in some cultures. So after that circuitous route where she went down to see the crime scene, sped off, went to buy the Bullet bourbon, then she went to some gas station and bought some glue or something before going back up to meet her friends for lunch. So once I heard about that, I was pretty convinced. I was like, oh my gosh, this lady, I'm sure she had something to do with it. She knew that her ex was going to be shot and killed that day. There's a whole lot of other evidence that, I mean, it's not direct evidence, but there's the information that her ex-boyfriend gave to the police that also brings out a lot of really shady things about her behavior. So anyway, so I'll stop there if you want to interject and let us know your opinions.
Well, so it's also true, I think, or at least what I heard is the family had had some discussions. What if we give Dan $1 million? Would he let us take the kids then? And that wasn't going to, he just wasn't going to budge because he wanted to be around his kids. And so then the idea is that this conspiracy arose that, well, we'll kill him, which is what happened. I mean, there was a conspiracy and he was murdered. There's no doubt about that. It's only about proving who all were the members of the conspiracy. And these two people who were on the screen, they didn't cook this up by themselves. That's why Charlie's on trial, but he also has unindicted co-conspirators because the other members of the family are suspected to be involved in this. But one of the things that when you talk about this case that hits me is, as the family complained about Dan, they often called him Jibbers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And some people have said that's similar to some Hebrew word about, you know, somebody acting like a horse, you know, like a braying horse. Mm-hmm. So that could have been why they nicknamed him Jibbers, but that was actually saved as his phone number ID on Wendy's cell phone. But on the stand, I think the judge asked her, how do you spell Jibbers? And she was like, I don't know, you know, I never spelled it before, you know, but of course, Kappelman, who is the prosecutor, immediately said, yeah, but you had him saved in your cell phone as Jibbers, right? So I thought that was a kind of a funny moment in the trial where she's denying that she even knew, you know, how to spell Jibbers. And she claimed that it was not a bad word. It was just a way to make him seem less intimidating or a way to make him less scary. You know, she tried to make him out to be this god-awful, you know, intimidating, you know, just a very horrible person to her. So that kind of, I think that backfired, though, because even the defense attorney at Katie's last trial, you know, pointed it out that Wendy's demeanor was very bizarre, that she just seemed to want to put down Dan Markel at every opportunity that she could.
Well, you know, it's people that get murdered, they don't have to be angels in order to receive justice. So even if he said something mean to her or was aggressive in some of the litigation, none of that has anything to do, because he did win. None of that has anything to do with justifying what happened to him. And it's terrible. I mean, the guy was just murdered right there in his driveway. And when you look at the picture of the people down there at the bottom, the association of these people is also bizarre because, as you mentioned, Sigfrido is what I think I called him in your chat. He's the ex-boyfriend of Katie, who was the kind of ex-girlfriendish of Charlie, who in theory wanted to have her reach out to her ex-boyfriend to murder his ex-brother-in-law, his sister's ex-husband. There's too many X boxes in this thing. It's very weird.
Yeah.
It's a huge, I mean, the case is just really interesting on all the facts of this. And so how bizarre all this, and, you know, how these people got ramped up and thought it would be a good idea to murder this guy as some solution to your domestic issues.
Yeah, that's why in closing, the prosecution also had this big colored chart of all these people. Oh, you got it. Hey, thank you. Okay, this colored chart. Of course, none of these people look as good as this anymore. You should see what these people look like today. But yeah, this whole web of people involved that are alleged to be part of the conspiracy to kill Dan Markel. So we haven't mentioned Luis Rivera, but he's the kind of pudgier guy at the bottom of this chart. So Luis Rivera was a childhood friend of Garcia's. And originally, Katie was just trying to get her baby daddy, Sigfredo Garcia, to go up there and kill Dan so they can make some money. But then Sigfredo reached out to his childhood buddy, which was a huge mistake, and just wanted company. Plus, Sigfredo didn't have a valid driver's license, so he needed Luis to help him rent the car. And so Luis was part of the Latin Kings, a gang, and he actually had a decent job. He was like a foreman or some sort of manager at maybe a concrete construction type company. But he decided, okay, well, let's go with Sigfredo and keep him company, help him drive up to Tallahassee to kill this guy. Although Luis did later make a deal pretty quickly with the state. So he's just serving 12 years for Dan's murder, plus 7 years for unrelated drug charges. So Luis explained that he did feel bad and he felt sad about it because he was like, what are we doing this for? Just for some effing kids? This is stupid. Why can't she just get sole custody? Because he said as part of his proffer that Sigfredo mentioned they were doing it for this lady who wants her 2 kids back. And Luis also later mentioned that supposedly they had seen Wendy on the street on Trescott when they were scoping out the place the day before Dan was shot. Of course, there's some controversy about that because I don't think Wendy's cell phone records reflected that she was actually in the area. But who knows? Maybe Luis and Sigfredo saw some other woman that Sigfredo thought was Wendy and pointed her out and said, that's Wendy, that's the lady that we're doing the job for. So that I find, again, very damning, whether they really saw Wendy or not. Sigfredo did mention her name.
So let me bring this comment up here. So Judy threw this word down, pudgy. And
I'm sorry, am I being insensitive?
No, it's a good word, but maybe not everybody knows it because people tune in from all over the place. When people were kids, when I was young, if you wanted to be polite about it, they were husky.
Oh yeah,
right. Yeah, and then so
like
husky,
Sears. Yeah, Sears had husky genes.
Yeah, so pudgy is getting a little bit more of the connotation there that maybe he ought to hit the gym some. So.
Well, Charlie really should. I mean, you guys should see how bad he looked at his last hearing just about a week or so ago. Yeah.
So now his trial is coming up, but you had breaking news on your channel last night, that analysis of the fact that a key witness is going to now show up and testify for the state. And that's somebody you're talking about here, right? Katie.
Yeah, and that's Katie. I guess I'm not pointing the right way. So Katie definitely does not look as pretty as she does in this picture anymore. You guys should check out some more recent pictures of these people. But so breaking news yesterday was that we saw an order filed in the case ordering that Katie be transported from the women's prison where she's currently at in Central Florida up to Tallahassee to testify for the state in Charlie's trial. So this is really great news. I was so surprised when I suddenly heard about it, thanks to another YouTuber, Fancy Fiction, who is really on the case too. So please check out Fancy Fiction's channel as well as Deep Dive True Crime. They've done lots of coverage from the start. So I don't want to take credit because I'm kind of late to the game. I didn't start really covering the Markel case until last spring. So anyway, it's big news because we did hear last fall that after Katie's conviction, she wanted to become the state's witness and she was giving proffers. But the content of those proffers has not been made public. The judge decided to keep them sealed until after Charlie's trial is over. So there was some talk on YouTube where a local Tallahassee lawyer said that he heard that Katie's proffers only took about 4 hours and was a nothing burger. So everybody was kind of down on that, like, oh man, we were hoping that Katie would really say something good against all the Adelsons. And so I felt kind of down about that too. But then lo and behold, we see that she is being transported up to testify at the trial. So she probably has tons of dirt on him and possibly against Wendy and the others.
And I'm sure she's subject to impeachment. However, that's not good if you're the defense side that she's coming, and she could blow this thing even wider open than it probably already is.
Yeah, totally. And of course, we know, of course, the defense is going to attack her credibility because through 2 trials, she kept maintaining that she had nothing to do with Dan's murder. And, I don't know, I don't remember this, blah, blah. But, I think the reasonable explanation, which I think a jury would believe, is that she felt intimidated by Charlie. Charlie had promised her more money and more favors and, just a lifetime of cash as long as she didn't say anything against him and kept quiet. Because even Charlie's other ex-girlfriend had mentioned in a police interview that Charlie had told her if the police ever contacted her, she should just say nothing. You don't know anything, don't talk to them, just come to me instead. So I'm sure that's exactly what happened to Katie. There was also like a jail informant quite a while back, someone named Amy, who said that Katie had actually flashed her fake boobs at her and said, hey, I got these because of that law professor. This was courtesy of that law professor. And when I get out of here, I'm going to be so rich. I'm going to be able to afford private tutors for my kids or private school and never going to have to work again. So, who knows if that jail informant was making it all up or not, but it sounds plausible given what happened because she did get breast implants soon after Dan was killed, and Charlie paid for at least half of it.
Another weird thing in this case that I saw is that Charlie had a habit, if he had like stacks of hundreds, he would staple them.
Yeah.
And so the stapled money plays into this case too, in terms of connecting people circumstantially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there were already several people who talked about stapled cash. There was Louis Garcia, who said, yeah, one thing that I thought was weird was that when we got the money, it was like stapled together in bundles of, $100 bills for every 1,000. It was stapled together, which was really weird. So lo and behold, Charlie's ex-girlfriend, June, did speak with police back in 2018. And she mentioned that too. She said, when I heard about this thing about the money being paid out in stapled cash, I thought that was kind of weird because, Charlie would staple his cash and I would see his money. And I thought it was really weird, like who staples cash? Use a paper clip or something. Of course, when she got to trial, this ex-girlfriend did seem very shifty on the stand. So people should check out that on YouTube too. It's kind of sad and funny in a way too, where she tries to back off all these things that she had freely told the police back in 2018 when she and Charlie were broken up and he had already fathered another child with some other woman. Wow. And then later she did get back together again with him, at least briefly, started getting some Louis Vuitton things that she was flashing on social media, So anyway, there are so many characters involved in this that it's kind of hard to keep track of everybody.
It is, and it's Florida reaching maximum Florida status, I think. Like you're saying, an 8-hour drive from one city to the next in a Prius by eco-friendly hitmen who are they're all ex-girlfriends and boyfriends, but they get along well enough to conspire for murder. But
because
they
they
get
wanted
mad
money. It was all because Charlie was the Adelsons were used to controlling people with money. And that's how sick they were to even come up with an idea of bribing Dan Markel with $1 million if he would just let Wendy have the kids. So, but we're not sure if Dan actually heard that offer, but Donna, the mother, definitely said that in an email to Wendy, which I read on my channel.
Yeah.
But speaking of the stapled cash, I forgot to mention also that there was another witness, Ryan Fitzpatrick, who had been Charlie's longtime friend, but like a lot of other people in Charlie's sphere, they had a falling out too. So Ryan actually, I think he testified against, well, I mean, this was in Katie's trial, but he testified that since they were business partners, he also saw that Charlie had that habit of stapling his cash together.
And that is just weird. I haven't seen that before.
Yeah, same here.
See if I've got any more slides on these guys. I don't. So we'll leave this case, which is complicated, but it's coming up for trial, and watch Judy's channel for it. When she said she read the email, she does not simply read these emails. This is a performance-based presentation she does where it's as if you're in the room with Donna, and so she's composing the email. So if you haven't seen it, you owe it to yourself to watch that.
Thank you, Steve.
So let's go local. We've been all around us, but let's head into North Carolina for a case which is very unfortunate and still currently unsolved. But as all these cases are, infuriating. But this one really has wound me up this week. Yes,
it's so sad to see these happy, pretty pictures of her, and they're all over Facebook because her husband, Omar, liked to post pictures on Facebook, and then there are other family members who still have some photos that are public.
And so this is Hadeel Hikmat, and she came from Iraq. And Judy, hit me if I'm getting any of this wrong, but this picture right here, the reason I put it up here, the first one, I mean, look at her. I mean, she's with the guy that's her husband. She's wearing a head covering that reflects the American flag, and she's happy. And she came here because she thought she could lead a better life. She could build a family here. She wanted to do well, and the kind of person that when our country is operating like it should, these are the kind of people who make it like that. And somebody took that away from her and left her body in Jordan Lake, and she was left unidentified for basically a week, which is inconceivable to me. And I'm sorry, I'm a little mad about this right now. It's quite, you can see this police sketch there. Judy, I'll let you talk maybe some of the facts of this because you did a great stream on this whole case. So I don't want to rage out and monopolize away from you.
Oh, no, it's okay. Yeah. I mean, so Omar, well, I don't know if I should say all this stuff, but whatever. I mean, a lot of times I do live streams and I think, oh, nobody's going to watch it anyway, so I'll just say whatever. But then it turns out that thousands of people watch it. But yeah. Anyway, I actually vaguely knew one of Omar's siblings many, many years ago when I tutored the sibling for the LSAT, which is a test that you have to take to go to law school. So from what I recall, it was really just their mom, Nita, who is a successful dentist who was an immigrant from Iraq, I think, although she might have gone through Turkey or some other country. And the father is, I don't know how to say it, but he's just some plain old white guy whose like parents or ancestors might have come from Eastern Europe. So it wasn't like a totally immigrant family, just to be nitpicky about it. So the family had 4 children. Omar was either the oldest or the second oldest child. And unfortunately, it doesn't look like he really launched much of a career because after he graduated from UNC Greensboro, he wound up working in the lawn care section of Home Depot. So even on Facebook, he was kind of griping about it and saying that it was too physically exhausting. Even though he liked his job, he wanted to move on because it was tough on his body to be working at Home Depot. So this is probably like a Home Depot that I've been to, down towards Apex, because my old office was actually really close to where their townhome was. So who knows, maybe I'd pass by Omar in Home Depot. So from what I pieced together, thanks to Facebook and social media and stuff, it looks like Omar got some sort of online teaching degree, like a master's degree from Grand Canyon University. And he wanted to become a substitute teacher or work as a librarian, which I don't think it really pays that much more than working at Home Depot. I mean, what do you think?
Probably not. Yeah.
Yeah. So it sounds like his poor wife ended up coming over here and she was the one supporting him. I mean, he did work part-time from what it looks like. But so why is it that this woman who just came here from Iraq last year is supporting the family? That just sounds really messed up, in my opinion. So she was a chemical engineer before she moved here. It sounds like they got married overseas, maybe in Turkey or Iraq or something. And then after a couple of years or so last year, she finally moved here to live with him, probably in fall of 2022. And then, unfortunately, something happened where a boater found her body floating at Lake Jordan at the end of August. So this just happened.
And you can see this picture here I got from one of the news stations around here. They created a sketch pretty quickly of her that looks a lot like her. And so how does your wife go missing? And the next day, a body is found in the lake. And within a couple of days, a sketch is put up that looks like her. And she goes unidentified for a week. That doesn't look good to me.
Yeah. From what I heard, it sounded like her brother had to come from Turkey to identify her body. So it's like, isn't her husband like right here as well as her in-laws? They're all living around Wake County. Raleigh it's very bizarre. It seems very suspicious. So, that's why, as far as I know, the husband probably is the main suspect. So her brother has been very outspoken in this case, which is great because who's going to really advocate for her if the husband is staying silent and whoever else might have known her? I haven't heard anything else. It's just her brother who's been in the media speaking in English, talking about how Omar and Hadeel had marital problems for a while. They were fighting all the time. She wanted to have kids, but apparently there were some, maybe some dysfunction issues, fertility problems, and he wasn't very supportive and was griping to her about why she had to keep talking to her family members and still keep in touch with them. He seems very controlling.
Well, and the police, of course, have executed some search warrants, and the two that we know about were at properties associated with the in-law family, which makes sense because one of those I think is where she lived, and the other one is the place that she visited. But I do have on here that they've got an attorney, the family does, who says they're going through a grieving process, and they say they're cooperating with law enforcement, and I think that's fine. But the husband's Facebook is still active. He has posts on it, nothing recently, and nothing about his wife who went missing, and nothing that I saw, and nothing about his wife who is now dead. And, okay, get a lawyer and make a statement. I understand trying to navigate the system, but it just seems to me that she was, at the time she was murdered, it's like, let's just say she doesn't exist anymore, mm-hmm. And boy, does that.
Yeah. And I've heard of the family's attorney before. I don't know if you have, since we're all practicing in Wake County. And I always thought she did more immigration cases as opposed to criminal defense.
Yeah, and I do see that. I think her firm at least mentions criminal defense there, but it seems to have an immigration focus. And it's fine if it's an attorney they already knew, maybe even helped her come over here or something like that. There's nothing wrong with the attorney's statement, and not inappropriate to have an attorney help you if because your homes have been searched and things. That is all fine. I think. I just think it's terrible that she was left unidentified for a week, okay, and her family's local and they knew she was gone, and that's pretty much all that has happened is this attorney's statement. It really, really suggests things to me. Yeah.
Well, I also don't think the attorney actually said the family was cooperating with the police. She just gave some general feel-good statement, like the family's grieving, and that's all we want to say now. We trust the process. Something to that effect. Yeah, because I don't think he was cooperating at all. That's why they had to do those search warrants and, seize people's phones and laptops and the vehicles. So also what I found interesting was that somehow Hadeel's brother quickly saw my YouTube video. That's always a surprise. I don't know how he found it, but he has left some really interesting comments mentioning that Omar's mother had allegedly told him as well as his sister, different stories about what happened to Hadeel. So this is all allegedly, of course, because nobody's been charged or arrested. But supposedly the mother-in-law, who is the dentist here, had just suddenly called up Firas, who is the brother, in the middle of the night and said, "Hey, where's Hadeel? We don't know what happened to her." Omar said that they got in a fight and she spat on him, and that she got in a car with 3 other people and drove off. So the brother was like, "What? How would I know where my sister is? I'm all the way out here in Turkey." And he didn't think that sounded like a rational story either. I mean, does she have a habit of just like running off after a fight with some strangers? I mean, she just showed up here last year. How many friends could she possibly have? So then the younger sister of Hadeel, who's in Iraq, called this mother-in-law to see what's going on. And mother-in-law tells a different story and says that something about how Hadeel and Omar had gone out to dinner or something. I'm not really clear on that, but it does sound like there were at least 2 or 3 different stories that the mother-in-law gave to Hadeel's siblings. So, of course, the brother, Firas, called the police and the sheriff's office and tried to get them to do something. So they went out and talked to Omar's in-laws, or at least the mother-in-law, in the middle of the night, which is great. I'm like, wow, they're very responsive. And at which point the mother-in-law allegedly became enraged and called back Hadeel's sister and started raging and saying, "Hey, your bastard brother called the police. Why'd he do that?" Does that sound like innocent people?
No, it doesn't. And it's possible that the stories that she was telling, they were being fed to her, and maybe she was trying to figure out, well, why would this happen? But if it's true that she reacted that way to the police being called, yeah, I agree. That doesn't sound like the appropriate reaction when someone is missing, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't know where she is. Why would you be angry that the police are called trying to figure out the well-being of this person who is in your family?
Yeah. Instead, so she blew up at her brother and immediately cut off connection with him. No more WhatsApp connection or whatever else. I also noticed that she has no Facebook profile picture or anything that's public now.
Well, I will say before I switch to the next slide that Judy mentioned to the brother on her channel in the comments that, be good to contact a local attorney here to help navigate the process. And I chimed in a little bit in support of that because I think that is a good idea. And the people she mentioned, I'm sure, will be very willing to help. Everybody who looks at this is going to understand that this woman didn't have the resources she needed. And what happened to her is a tragedy. And her family are worth supporting. Her brother said, "Listen, we believe in the U.S. We believe in the U.S. Constitution. We want justice." And, that resonates with me. And I think it will with anybody that they need to contact to help them. Yeah.
So I'm sure that's what has been said, is that there's still a very active investigation. So all those things need to be tested, all the forensic science needs to be done.
And so here we got on the slide here, which is the phone number for the Sheriff's Department who's handling this. And it's 919-542-2911.
Oh, it's 2811. I wrote
it.
Down.
Okay.
Yeah, 2811.
I didn't write this, so listen to what Judy's saying. But maybe if you don't get what you want, try this one too, because maybe there's more than one. I actually clipped this. True. I clipped this from somewhere, so it could be either or both of those. It could be 542-2811, which it probably is, and maybe there's also a 2911. But you can also Google it. I didn't put it on here because this is just a slide. But if you go to the Chatham County, North Carolina Sheriff's Department website, they have an electronic ability to submit a tip to, or call in case somebody around here knows anything about what was going on before this murder occurred or after it. But you know what? You can call the Raleigh Police Department, Apex. They're all working on the case, but Chatham has it because of where it was located. And if anybody can bring any information to this, I hope they do. These cases can be difficult to actually solve, even if you ultimately think you have an idea of what happened, because sometimes the people involved in it had reasons to be around with each other, and sometimes the evidence is thin. But I'm hoping that the police will be able to bring this together. She left where she was based on the promise of coming somewhere better with someone who loved her, to build a family, and somebody took that away from her, and took it away from her family, and took it away from our community where Judy and I live. To have somebody like that here, it's the kind of person who makes this place better, and it's just wrong in every way.
Yeah, and since she worked at Walmart, I'm thinking maybe she got sort of to be friends with some of her coworkers, so the police probably have talked with her coworkers also. Yeah, but there seems to be this overarching theme based on what her brother has said, that there was a lot of tension between her and her husband right before she, is found dead in Lake Jordan.
Well, law enforcement is going to be motivated to solve this for all the reasons that we're talking about. And if anybody can help them do it, and no judgment on who was involved in it, because we don't know. So anything anybody does know about her could be helpful to the police. So if anybody sees it, and I want her brother to know too, in case he happens upon this video, that we all do care about this. And if there's some way we can support them, we certainly will, including encouraging anybody who has information that helps put somebody in the picture, out of the picture, or whatever, to contact authorities with it, because they want to figure out the truth of what happened.
Yeah. So. Well, I mentioned this in my live stream, but as a family lawyer who is trying to really push collaborative divorce nowadays, this is just really saddening, because they didn't even have any children together. What was there really he could have just let her leave. So I don't know what exactly, maybe she was threatening to take all his money or something, but it sounds like he didn't have any money anyway. So why do you need, if this happened, why would anyone need to resort to murder when there's some sort of marital problem? When divorce is always an option, there are ways that you can try to reach a resolution, but that also requires that people be rational and reasonable and not want to kill people.
Well, and yeah. And there's nothing this woman was involved in or could have been involved in that would have made what happened to her in any way justified at all. So, it's not like she was in some super conflict where if you didn't kill her, she was going to rat you out for this. It is irrational. It certainly was just an absolute waste. It really, really is. It's just sad. Sometimes you see people that are murdered and you think the person who did the murdering really didn't even get anything out of doing that. Like they didn't steal even a car or $1 million or whatever. Not that justifies it, but it's like there was nothing to warrant this. Nothing. And she was left in the lake and then left unidentified for a week. Okay. With her in-law family here. Why? I don't know. Maybe they'll answer all that and maybe they won't. That's their choice. But I just hope the police figure out who did it, how they did it, and put that person behind bars. That's all that can be done now. At least that would be a demonstration to her family around the world that people here did care, and her life was worth something to people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just to sort of balance things out a little bit, of course, I do feel sorry for the Drapik family. Not sure if my former student is ever going to see this video or something, but I do wish her well. I hope, I don't think she had anything to do with it. It's just horrible for this family where the mother was very well known in the community, especially being a leader in different dental organizations. It looks like she was also the founder of a free clinic in Cary that gives free medical and dental care to people without insurance. A lot of them are immigrants. And it's still, as far as I know, I think the clinic is still going. They're open on Sunday afternoons. And they also helped with something called Smiles. I can't remember what that's called, Operation Smiles or something, giving free dental care to people in need. So, this is just really sad that it has cast a bad light on the family. So, if they had nothing to do with this, I know there's another family member who is a dentist somewhere else, and it's just sad that they have to now be associated with this homicide.
Well, and it's a good point because, the police have been there, and I think the daughter in some report I saw said that they had their guns out and stuff and they were executing the search warrant. There are members of that family who probably are like, what has happened and what happened to Hadeel? And then they're being subject to search warrants. And it's a trauma for them too. And it may be that they're all additional victims in this. It may be that not all of them are, but certainly some of them likely are too. So I don't want to cast too much negativity on her, on that family, the in-law family, because we don't know all the circumstances. But I just hope, like you do, that the truth gets out there, that the police figure it out, whether it was strangers, whether it was somebody in the family, whether it was some other circumstance. Figure out the truth and be able to report it back to her family, and the appropriate result came out. The police are pretty insistent this was a homicide. This was a murder. So I'm taking that at face value. And so therefore I want to see somebody behind some prison bars at some point.
Thanks for covering this, Steve.
Yeah. So for our last slide, I got up on here so we don't have to end on all just murders, is from the pole vault, which is hearsay. Yesterday, I put this hypothetical out that if somebody's on a retrial and the district attorney says, I don't want to make people come in again, I'll just show the video from the first trial. Is that hearsay or not? It is hearsay. It is hearsay. Look at the definition of hearsay. If you're making a statement other than made by the person who's testifying at the trial or hearing, it's hearsay unless it's defined out or an exception. So hearsay it's a simple definition, but it is a complicated concept to really grasp. And so you can't just bring in videos of people testifying in other trials and play it in the new one unless you have an exception. And if the other witnesses are available to come testify, then you can't come under the exception of declarant not available. So they would need to come in and testify. But look at this. I put it up here only because it's split 50-50. So 50% thought you can allow this in, 50 didn't. And to me, it shows that this whole thing about hearsay is hard to grasp how the legal system deals with that in the case of a trial. But there's almost anything you're saying, if you're not saying it in court based on your own present declaration, is hearsay, but there are lots of exceptions and lots of things that are defined out of it. It's a complicated topic, but I've been putting up hypotheticals to see where people trip up on it. And that's one. Just because you testified in court at some prior hearing doesn't mean that can just float into any trial down the line. That's hearsay. And unless for some reason it comes under an exception, like you died and the person had the chance to cross-examine you, then you might be able to bring it in under declarant not available exception and stuff like that. So anyway, I just want to finish with something that isn't a murder.
Oh, thank you, Steve. Yeah, I really like the educational component of your case. You sound like a great CLE presenter or law professor telling everybody about the law. And of course, these like hearsay exceptions, the laws could be slightly different from state to state. And as far as I know, this could be admissible in the civil context, but I'm not sure about North Carolina criminal law here, but it could be that it's okay in the civil context, but not in the criminal context. So, that's why there are so many nuances here.
But the basic principle, if you're thinking about it, I think is good to think about, is the law favors live testimony, live witnesses that come to court and tell what they know. And if you can't do that, then you need to have some exceptions for that. And it is possible. There are lots of exceptions. And then also, if you're on the stand and you say, well, this other person told me that, that's hearsay on its face, but there can be lots of exceptions for why you might be able to say it. So it's a complicated topic, that's for sure. A lot of lawyers struggle with it. And since I don't really go to trial anymore, I have to sit there and think about it sometimes for a minute to think, is this an exception or not? And then just because it might be, like you say, in North Carolina, it doesn't mean it's the same in South Carolina or Florida or Michigan or whatever. Every state has its own way it presents the law and their own rules and all that. So it's not easy to have your head around all of it. That's for sure. So Judy, what do you want to tell us before we head off to the weekend? Anything you got coming up on your channel that we should look out for, or anything exciting? Yeah,
well, I'm still doing a lot of things about this whole Dan Markel murder case. It's kind of personal to me because I also came from a relationship where I was involved in the legal education community. Since Dan was a law professor, my ex is also a law professor, and we had to move just like Wendy because of his job. So, and then we also got divorced separated, divorced the same year, had a child the same year. So I also happen to be like 1 or 2 degrees of separation from Dan Markel. So that's why personally, I really feel like covering the case a lot. But I do realize, there's a limit as to what you can do about just one case. So try to cover some other cases. So I'm really glad to have met you through YouTube. It's kind of funny that I've been practicing here for 22 years, and I've never even met or heard of you. So it shows how big our community is here.
It is big. And when I came to Raleigh, I think I mentioned it to you offline, but I was a general counsel. So it's not like I was floating over to the courthouse very often, only if I had friends who needed people sued and things like that, which is all I do now. So, but it's a big bar here. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And I'm a recluse, man. I like being out here. It only looks like I like being around people. There's books and stuff, but I'm a country person. I'm a recluse.
Okay, great. Yeah, so YouTube is like our outlet to reach out to people, and then we can just hide in our own house and do what we need to do.
If you go on the trails and things around here, you might run into me, but if it's a mall or something, it'd be highly unlikely.
Yeah. Great. Well, hopefully if we can meet up in person someday, I'll let you know when I'm in Raleigh or wherever. So my office is in Cary, close to the Bar Center.
Well, and of course, if people are watching this who are local, take notice of what we said that Judy does at the beginning of the stream, because if you ever find yourself in need of that, or friends, she's obviously extremely intelligent, but beyond that, I think her approach to how she's handling her cases is really laudable, and the way it should be done. That's my opinion. But I appreciate Judy coming on and telling us about these cases, and that's just touching on the intricacies of especially the Markel case, which she has a lot of streams with many of the people who are involved in the case and stuff. So you want to know more about it as this case is coming to trial, there's your resource. And I'm sure also if anything happens in the case important, she'll be the place to find it. But I hope everybody has a good weekend. I'm sorry, because Judy and I were talking, we didn't catch all the comments about Scotland. I'm going to try and review that later. And I know my wife will tell me about a lot of those too. I saw something about passport in there, so maybe we're doing a trip or whatever. But I really hope everybody has a great weekend. And Judy, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you.
And then we'll launch this outro.